Hello again, everybody, and welcome to the 5th episode of the Board Game Nerds podcast. I am your host, Nick, and with me, as always, is my co-host, Ayub.
Hello.
I hope everybody's doing okay. Today, we will be talking about some board game words or mechanisms or keywords that we use when talking in this podcast, so you have a better idea of what we are talking about. But before all that, we will be talking about the games we've been playing. Ayub will kick us off with the White Castle and the new Matcha expansion, and I will be talking about Fateforge Chronicles of Kaan. Ayub, take it away.
Yep, if you remember the SN preview list, the White Matcha expansion for the White Castle was my number one pick. So, of course, I was super hyped to try this game, and I tried a two-player game with Nick earlier this week, and that was very interesting. So just to once again give a little short recap of what the White Castle is, even without the Matcha expansion, is a dice drafting worker placement game where you will use dice as workers to activate different places on the board. You have 3 bridges where you will pick up a dice from, and with the Matcha expansion, you now have a 4th bridge where you will pick a green die, hence the Matcha tea thing. So where you place your die dictates which actions you will take, and on different places of the board there will be colors asserted with the dice. So for example, if you take a black die to a place that has 2 black cubes, a picture of 2 black cubes and a picture of a white cube, you'll get to do 2 actions if you use a black die and only 1 action if you do pick a white die. On top of that, if you pick from the front of the bridge where the numbers are higher, you will often get some money because you will get the difference in value from where you place your die. And if you pick from the bottom of the bridge where the dice is lower, you will usually have to pay money, but you get to activate your lantern bonus, which is a bonus that you will have at the bottom of your player board. In the old game, you only had 9 turns, so over 3 rounds you would pick 3 dice and the game would end. Now with this expansion where there is an extra board in the bottom and an extra bridge, you'll actually pick another die in each of the 3 rounds. That means you went from 9 turns till 12 turns. On top of that, the new area makes a lot of possibilities from new scoring methods, which means you will get more points now. They even added an extra scoring tile that you can flip now to plus 80, plus 120, kind of also forecasting that we'll get a lot of more points now. It was very interesting to play. The game was definitely way more open now. Even though each player has 1 more turn, there are a lot of new spots. You got a new player board, which also has a new spot. And therefore, it seems like it became more Euro-ish with the many different ways to score and always probably some action that you'll be happy about or at least will be okay with doing. And so it's very cool with some new cards and some new spots. And we'll definitely need to play it more for me to give a final verdict. But I so far enjoyed the expansion. And I'm looking forward to see how it works with 3 and 4 player. A 3-player game in the White Castle is usually the tightest. There won't be more spots, even though there's another player. Hence, therefore, the action spaces will be taken more often. Where in a 4-player game, you can put the dice on top of each other, making it actually the least tight game because there will be double the amount of spots as there is in a 3-player game. On top of that, when somebody maybe picked a die from the back of the bridge and placed it somewhere, when you place on top of that, the value that is already there is so low that you will always get money, or almost get something at least. So yeah, how did you find the game you played of the White Castle with the Matcha expansion, Nick?
Well, the White Castle has been a bit of a roller coaster for me. It's what I like to describe as the Scythe experience. And for those of you that don't know what that means, is that the first game I've played ever of Scythe was awful. And then it gradually became better in my mind to a point being in my top 10 board games up to a few years ago. It was the same with White Castle. The first time we played it with 2 of our friends, I don't want to say I hated it, but I will just say I didn't like it. Of course, I misunderstood the very crucial rule, so that was also one of my problems with the game. But after a bit more plays, I was like, man, maybe there is something here after all. And then I played it a few more times, and I'm like, oh, that is a good, tight Euro game. We like that. If only it was a little more spacey, if it wasn't so tight, I would love it. And hence comes the Matcha expansion. And it gives us 3 more turns in a 9-turn game. I love that. I usually don't mind. I'm not like many people want the games to be tight, so you're not being able to do everything, right? But in White Castle, I felt that it was like in an extreme degree. And I'm also not one of those people. I like being able to do a lot of stuff. So this expansion for me elevated it very, very high. I would definitely say a top 50 game for me now, which it was not. It was like my 91st or something in the previous list. So definitely very hyped to play it again. Definitely willing to try it. And I will say to anybody that's hesitant about the matcha expansion, definitely get it. I believe it's, I don't want to use the word essential, but I believe it's a very, very good addition to the game. Definitely recommend it.
Yeah, and it adds this new resource, matcha, which you will have on your board and use especially in the bottom part, the extension they added to the board, and also some of the new cards that are added in the deck works along with matcha. Also, the new board adds a little tile that you add in that you will pick in the beginning of the draft.
Oh, yeah.
And that tiles works with your... So on your board, you had 3 spaces where you could place your red die, a black die, or a white die, and you will activate a row depending on how many workers you unlocked from your board, and then do the action of the card in the end. Now with the green die, that doesn't go to the card in the end, but it will go to that new little tile that you will draft in the beginning. And that can be so different. That will let you take an additional action. It will let you do the place out a warrior and get 2 coins. It will let you
mine was pretty cool.
move up the castle without paying pearls.
That was nice.
And that really adds some, like, both some direction for players and also just another layer of variability that you didn't have before. So that's super cool.
Do you like matcha? Do you drink matcha?
I do drink a lot of tea. I think good matcha is hard to get in Denmark, maybe. So my sister was in Korea and Japan and got some matcha back for me. And that was nice. But otherwise, no, I don't really drink matcha.
I would love to get a good matcha place here. That would be nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. What is your game, Nick?
Yeah, mine is definitely in a very different spectrum from the White Castle. Mine is called Fate Forge Chronicles of Kaan. It's a big campaign game that I got in Essen, and I will review it exclusively as a solo game, as I've only played it solo. Despite that, I've played it a lot. I'm now almost 2/3 in the main campaign, and I've played for over 12 hours, so I have a lot of feedback to give. Okay, so let's take it from the top. In Fate Forge, you are a party of adventurers trying to go through a narrative experience/combat experience in a campaign-style game. In the solo game, you select 2 characters in the beginning. There are 5 to choose from, if you have the expansion, 4 in the base game, or 5 or 6 among those numbers. And once you pick your characters, you begin by downloading an app. In the app, you will record the characters you got, and you will start reading through a narration. In the narration, there are 2 things that can happen. First, you might have a narrative choice, which means you will be asked a question and you have to answer as if you were your characters. No roles, no nothing, just a choice you make. The second thing that can happen in a narration is you are forced to take a skill challenge. And let's talk about a little bit about your character. Your character is consistent of some attributes. They're called traits, and each character will have a specific trait, a special ability that's variable from character to character, and then 4 dice. Dice come in 4 colors, and each color represents something else. For example, the red dice have more sword symbols, which means it's better used in a melee combat. Then there's the blue for movement, the yellow for sneaking around, and the green for magic. So every die is different, and every hero has a combination of 4 of these dice. So when you're asked to make a skill challenge, you roll none of these dice. You roll a neutral die that has 4 success sides, 1 fail side, and 1 skill side. 4 of the 6 times you will succeed. Pretty good. If you have the specific skill in your trait, then 5 out of 6 times you will succeed. And the way the tests work are you roll 1 die, and if you succeed, you did it. That's the easy test. You roll 2 dice in a medium test and 3 dice in a hard test. And you need all of them to be successes. If you do, you click success, you go on. If you don't, you click failure, and you go on. Pretty simple, pretty straightforward. And that's pretty much how all the non-combat works. Whenever you reach at a point where combat is inevitable and you have to fight, then is where the game becomes like a combat game. You set up the board, which is really fast. The teardown and setup is really, really fast. Not something like Gloomhaven, for example, where the setup was like almost as much as the game itself. So you set up this terrain, of course, following the instructions of the app. And once everything is set up, the combat begins. combat usually lasts only 3 or 4 rounds, depending on what you play. I think there is also some 5-rounders later on in the campaign. I haven't got to them yet. In combat, what you do is you begin every turn by rolling your dice. Once you've rolled your dice, there are a few ways to mitigate the results, and you can also pay something to move, and then you're done. Then you have your dice in front of you, and on your turn, you simply spend your dice to take actions. You can spend one sword side of the die to make a melee attack, one arrow to make a ranged attack, one boot to move, and so on and so forth. And you go on taking your turn with your 2 characters. When you're done, then it's the enemy's turn. A very clever AI on how they are working. They have a big card, and all of them are separated by color. Each encounter will have only one type of each color of enemy. So you will never meet 2 white enemies, for example, in a combat. You will always meet one type of white, one blue, one red, and so on and so forth. They activate in order, and they have very distinct and clear instructions on what they do. That makes combat a little bit repetitive, but the amount of different enemies that there are and the amount of different things they can do is pretty much enough for the whole campaign to keep you guessing. So, very quick combat, very interesting and simple narrative choices, and a very good story progression where you get points to get more traits, you get money to buy more equipment, you can get new skills, which is like the main thing that you do your whole combat thing based on. And I believe so far I am surprised and impressed by Fate Forged. I had already seen about this game before going to Essen, but I never expected it to be so good. Man, I'm loving it. I'm enjoying it so much. There is a way to play in a non-campaign mode where you can just set up battle mode, as it's called. I haven't tried that yet. Maybe we can do it a few times if you want. But apart from that, yeah, Fate Forged I definitely recommend for somebody who plays campaign and or solo games. And just amazing. I love it. Yeah.
Yeah, and how does it compare to other campaign games? Now you mentioned Gloomhaven yourself that you played so far.
Gloomhaven has much more depth in its combat, and it's mainly in dungeon crawl, which means the narration is pretty limited in Gloomhaven, and it's mainly focused on battle and mechanisms there. Of course, the battle mechanisms of Gloomhaven are more advanced, hence more interesting, but if you take it as an overall experience, especially when talking about solo gaming, Fate Forged is way, way, way better in my opinion. Now, as a whole game, it's really hard to judge because even though they're both campaign games, I would argue that they're very different in their execution. If you ask me which one I enjoyed more, I think, of course, my vote goes to Gloomhaven because I've also played it with friends, which is an experience you cannot copy in playing solo, no matter how good the game is. But still, I'm really enjoying Fate Forged a lot. Yeah, 100%.
So for our listeners, if they like campaign games or dungeon crawlers and so on, you definitely think these games can coexist in your home.
Definitely. First of all, to our listeners that might enjoy this, don't get Gloomhaven unless you have a dedicated party. Because if you don't have a dedicated party that moves to other countries or don't want to play anymore, then you will be left hanging with an amazing story that you don't know what happens in the end. In Fate Forged, on the other hand, I believe it's like a maximum 30-40 hour campaign, which means even if your party is not that dedicated, it goes so fast that you can definitely get it done. So if you want like something that you are sure to finish, because campaign games mostly stay on the shelf and are not getting finished, at least in my opinion, then I would go with Fate Forged. If you have the committed party to go through, then definitely go Gloomhaven.
Yeah, and Gloomhaven is more like 120 to 50 hours or something like that.
Yeah, it's like 120. I think 90 definitely for the base game. And then if you add in Forgotten Circles or Jaws of the Lion, then it can get up to 100, 120 for sure.
All right.
Yeah, so bigger game.
Cool. Thank you. Sounds cool.
Yeah, it is.
Then we will go into our topic of the day, which is board game mechanics.
Let's do it. Do you want to start us off, or you?
I will start us off.
Let's go.
So we have just split up a lot of mechanics. We'll go through them one by one. And the first one I will go through is a quite simple one, which is a tiebreaker.
Ooh.
And if a game has like winners or losers that are determined by points or money or any other similar mean, a tiebreak is a rule that will tell you who would win in a case where they have the same amount, where it is a tie. A tiebreaker can also be used in a game. For example, if you will score for whoever has the most of something in an area. We played City recently, where when you scan an area, whoever marked the most signal will get a bonus there. If we mark the same amount, whoever marked first, last, I remember, will be the one who wins
Get the
that
benefit,
majority there. So a tiebreaker is simply just a rule that will decide who wins or gets something in case both did the same amount. Another game that I like, a dexterity game, Crash Octopus, where you need to flick things on your ship, and then when it hits your ship, you can put the stuff on the ship. But if other things fall down while you flick stuff into it, you lose those things. Quite funny. If you have the same amount of items on your ship at the end of the game, there is a list of what is most valuable. Of course, having a captain is better than having a piece of wood. That, I mean, is self-explanatory. So yeah, that is what a tiebreaker is. It will help you find a winner so you don't always have to hold hands and say, yay, we all won.
I have a question.
Hit me.
How do you feel talking about a tiebreaker going from a game like SETI to a game called Crash Octopus?
Ah, man, I'm so happy about myself. I really show our listeners how versatile I am, man.
Diversity in board gaming.
Diversity, man.
You heard it here first.
I love everything. All right.
All right, what's your favorite tiebreaker? Do you have one?
Yeah, I wouldn't say I have a favorite tiebreaker rule. I do like rules similar to the one in Anak, where whoever achieved something, so in Lost Ruins of Anak, there's this research track, and whoever got up there first would win tiebreakers later on, rather than just who has the most resources left. But other than that, I wouldn't say I have a specific favorite tiebreaker rule. So yeah, but anyways, that was the first, mechanic?
The first keyword.
Yeah, the first keyword or board game mechanic that we talk about today. And what is the second one, Nick?
Well, the second one is one that now that I've been re-listening to our episodes, I actually mentioned a few times. It's called a gimmick. And a gimmick, when used outside the context of board gaming, is like a trick being used to attract the attention of the people. Usually, marketing teams do it in various aspects of their work. And how it works in board game is if it is like a unique thing that this game has that doesn't necessarily contribute to the game, but it's like, wow, to see. An example, and I think we played this together, it's a game called Mystic Vale. In Mystic Vale, there is this gimmick where you actually craft your card on your own. In Mystic Vale, you have this see-through card where you actually put pieces of the cards together to actually craft a card. So that's like pretty unique because you don't have a single card that you play, like in most games. You have pieces of a card that actually create the card that you play. Another one that I can think of is in another game I love called Dice Forge. In Dice Forge, you just roll a die, but what you can actually do is change the sides of your die, like physically change them. Like you remove the die with your finger and you put another side to the die. That's also a nice gimmick.
Yeah, another gimmick that I can think of is the gimmick for Camel Up, where you have this pyramid that you will shake and get a dice out. And I remember the version that I've tried, the pyramid was a little bit messed up. And it was very hard to get one dice out, and then three would fall out, and then in the end of the day, you could have just drawn one from a back and rolled it. So that's also a gimmick, but it looks nice, and people are happy about it when they play it.
All right, what's next?
All right, next I will talk about what it means when we talk about an expansion.
Ooh.
And an expansion for a game is new content for a game that often enhances the experience and extends the base game. An expansion can not be played alone, so it's not like an extra little game, but it's something that adds to an already existing game. So either additional components and rules, and everything from a small to a big change to the game. So an example of this could be Terraforming Mars, where Prelude is a very famous expansion that gave everybody some starting resources and a little bit of an ability or extra production that kind of helped you know what to do from the start.
Yes.
That would be an expansion for that game. And there are many expansions nowadays. Almost every big game will get a big expansion later on and so on. It's very, very common to see. And as you heard the top 10 SN preview list, I was waiting for a lot of expansion to games that even came the year before. So yeah, that is a very common thing. Also a game like Robo Rally where you race around with some robots to get to different checkpoints. And common expansion for that game has through many times been that you'll get more maps, so you can make different layouts to the track you're racing. So yeah, that is expansion.
Yeah, you've already mentioned my favorite expansion and the one that's by far the best. expansion. Another one I would like to mention that feels like super essential to me is an expansion for the game Lords of Waterdeep. It's called Scoundrels of Skullport, and it's Waterdeep is just like a mainstream worker placement game. All you do is place a worker, and the options that open up to you when you place that expansion and this little corruption mechanic make it like essential in my taste.
Yeah, and another essential expansion for us is expansions for Lost Ruins of Arnak.
Of course.
Without that, you will just start with the same starter cards, and you can do the same things. But with the expansion that adds new cards, new maps, and two new tracks, you also get different characters that you can play that can do different things.
Which I think that's the main thing that...
What's one of the very exciting things about the game.
I want you to try and imagine Lost Ruins of Arnak without leaders. And I want you to tell me if it would still be your number one game.
Without the expansion, it will definitely not be my number one.
So an expansion actually made the game so good that it is now your number one game.
Yeah.
So expansions hold power.
Yep.
All right. Let's move on to the next one.
Yep.
And my next word is a word called metagame or meta. What that means is like every play group has an ecosystem that exists within it. There are different strategies being developed inside that playgroup, and different people act different ways in that playgroup. Metagame can be applied not only to a specific playgroup, but often in a local scene on the entirety of a game as well. The most common use of the word metagame comes in mainly trading card game environments, and that's where my background comes from. So for example, if you play Magic the Gathering, there's always a standard metagame that exists, like these cards are good now, these cards are not good now. And this can be said also about board games. So, if you're playing Terraforming Mars, then of course it's in the metagame to try and play as much green cards as possible because they advance your engine and stuff like that.
Yeah, and also through the time there's been metagames in chess as well, I believe, where a certain opening was like the new best opening. And now chess has, of course, developed a lot through the years, but there will often be a metagame of how to play something in that type of a valley where there's everything is visible, and it's very much a head-on battle.
Alrighty. Word number 5.
All right, I will now go through Push Your Luck.
Oh, damn.
Push Your Luck is there will be some sort of aspect in a game where you can take a risk, often multiple times maybe, that will reward you more and more every time you do it, but you might risk losing something or even everything you got if it fails. A great example of this is the Push Your Luck game, Can't Stop, where you will roll 4 dice, and those 4 dice you will put together 2 and 2. So, for example, if you rolled a 5 and a 3, that's 8, and then you rolled a 4 and a 2, that's 6, and now you advance on those 2 tracks, 4 and 6. Each round or each turn, you can advance on 3 tracks. So once you rolled which 3 tracks you will advance on, you must roll at least one roll that would let you continue to advance on one of those tracks. And you can do that as many times as you want. But if you roll in such a way that you cannot advance on any of those 3 tracks, you lose everything you got so far. Otherwise, at some points when you feel like now I advanced enough and I should be happy and content with this, you would then mark where you got to, so next time you will continue from there. So Push Your Luck is just a way or a mechanic where you can kind of push it because you feel like you're lucky enough to gain something out of it, but of course there will always be drawbacks if you are not lucky.
I will go out on a limb and say I hate Push Your Luck as a mechanic because it depends on luck, which is counter to everything I stand for in board gaming. But Sid Saxon, the designer of Can't Stop, is by far one of my favorite designers, and Can't Stop is a masterpiece of a game. I also liked the other game we played. What was it called? Diamond? Yes. Yeah. That was also very good, I would say. Very fun. Yeah.
Diamond is definitely also an excellent Push Your Luck game, and very exciting as well. And even Ra is also a Push Your Luck game to some extent. And Diamond is a remake of an old game called Incan Gold. So yeah, good mechanic, good games. It's a lot of fun. It's less about being super good in a game maybe, and just having a great time pushing your luck.
One of those 2 games is very good. I agree. Should I take it up?
Yeah. What's the next?
The next is also one I'm not really a fan of, and it's called Player Interaction. This, I think, is pretty clear from actually reading it, but what player interaction is in board games is when board games have different actions that you can take or moves that you can make that actually do things, positive or negative, mainly negative, to your opponents. So for example, let's say in a worker placement, if there was a spot that when you went there, all that happened was an opponent loses something, then that's player interaction. And it's also mostly used in area control games where there's like a big board and troops going on it, and you can fight with other people's troops, and you kind of lose control of what's happening because other people are messing with you. Spartacus, one of my favorite games, surprisingly, is a game that has a lot of player interaction through the use of intrigue cards. When you play a card in Spartacus, most of the times it will do something bad to your opponents than something good in you. That's pretty much what it is, and I know you like it more than I do, so what do you think about it?
Yeah, I think for me, it's definitely a fine balance. Some player interaction is nice for having this back and forth, and it also very much depends on who I play with. I have some friends where it is just a fun time where I won't swear on the podcast, but
Of course not.
My good friend Erkan will just do some very mean move and say some weird swear words and then laugh me in the face. I mean, while we do that in those games, it's fun. But I don't like it, of course, if it's 100% just that. I'm not a big fan of games like Exploding Kittings or other small games where there is like an insane amount of player interaction where everything is just
Munchkin.
Yeah, take that and all that all the way. So yeah,
let's go.
Cool. I will do the next one, and the next one will be point salad. So point salad is when a game has multiple point sources that you add up all together. So many ways to get points, and some point salad games, it is even difficult to take an action without getting points. A great example of this is Barcelona, where many of the actions you do will give you points. If you build a street, you get points. If you complete a building, you get points. If you put out trains, you get in-game points. If you increase your storage room, you get in-game points. So there are so many ways to get points, and that is a very common term now in newer Euro board games, where it seems that like a lot of board games, especially also Stefan Feld is very known for a lot of his board game being a point salad. So basically, just like you're mixing a salad of points.
Yeah, I mean, Castles of Burgundy, definitely one of the biggest point salads I've played, now that you mentioned Stefan Feld. Everything you do just chains together to give you points. Again, we played today, Civolution also seemed like a point salad. But generally, I think when it doesn't happen in excess, I don't mind it. Some games, when they do it in excess, it's a little bit annoying to keep track of everything.
Yeah, I think it definitely takes away sometimes from a game feeling unique, no matter like what the theme, everything is, if it's a point salad, because that's something that is so common now and also very popular, where other games, like games that is some sort of race or other thing, will feel more different. I definitely don't mind point salads. A lot of my favorite games are point salads, but I do also appreciate a lot when games do something different than that.
All right. Then let's move on to BGG, an acronym that you might have heard us talking about a lot. It's a short for Board Game Geek. Very quickly, it would be like the IMDb of board games. It's like a site where users can rank their games based on how much they like them. Users can track their collection online. Users can message other users about anything, about games they want, games they have for sale. They can make wish lists and stuff like that. And it's a very good source if you need to learn anything about a game. Whenever a game is posted on Board Game Geek, there are instantly forum threads about it, videos linked to it. It explains the player count, it explains the mechanisms. And if you have been following our Instagram at board_game_nerds, then you would have noticed that whenever I post a picture of a game we played, I always start with some BGG stats, like BGG title, then the complexity of the game, and some other info that we get from there. So it's a very useful tool. If you are a board gamer or aspire to become one and you don't have a BGG account, then you should probably do one.
Yeah, and also just like IMDb, there is a ranking list, a general ranking list. So no matter how you discuss with your friends, there is an official, you could call, #1 board game in the world right now. The same way there is a #1 movie in the world right now. Of course, that won't be true for everybody, that they will disagree and so on. But when we refer to the top 10 BGG games right now, that will be that.
And if you want a good first recommendation and the first way to look at BGG, then go and look up number 7 on BGG right now.
Wonder what that could be. All right, I will take the next mechanism. This will be short. It is co-op.
Oh.
And co-op is short for cooperative, and that means it's a game where you play together, either against the game or in teams where you work together against the other team. So that is what co-op stands for, cooperative.
Yeah, many games have you play as a team against other teams or against the game itself, and they are pretty interesting in some regards. There are some very highly rated co-op games like Spirit Island, but most of the time, many more experienced board gamers lean onto the player against player environment.
Yeah, I would say that it is not my favorite mechanism. I don't hate it, but it's definitely not what I'm going for in general when I'm looking for new games or which games to play with my friends and groups.
Yeah, I also am not a huge fan. I prefer it / like it when talking about a campaign or legacy game, but outside that scope, I also prefer head-to-head PvP games.
All right, then what is the next mechanism?
My next is also a mechanism, and we've already talked about it a little bit when I mentioned player interaction, and it's area control / area majority. As you might understand from the title, area control allows and awards players for using different pawns and pieces on a board, having presence here and there, and all this happening in a shared game board. So in an area control game that you might recognize like Risk, if you have presence in multiple continents, then you will get awards based on that. The most commonly used area control themes are of a big game board and huge chunky pieces and miniatures on that board trying to get you rewards, resources, points, or anything else. Area control, just like worker placement, which we'll talk about later, has been combined in the modern era of board games with other mechanisms. And one of the games we love with area control, Tyrants of the Underdark, has been combined with deck building, another mechanism we will talk about later. What that means is that you can have a deck building game at the same time as an area control mechanism. And I believe that me personally, I prefer having area control as a part of the game than as the main mechanism itself. Just like Tyrants, Minos we also played recently as well.
Yeah, and I would say area control is definitely not my favorite mechanism at all. I like Tyrants. Minos is also a nice area control game because what happens is whoever has the most gets a lot of points. Whoever don't have the most but are in the same area gets less points. So you don't really lose anything for your gameplay in that sense. But other games, the area control dictates how much you get, whether that being money or resources that will let you further on push the game. But yeah, since you talked about deck building, why don't I just talk about it right now? So deck building is a very famous mechanism, or like a very well-used mechanism now, I should say. Dominion was one of the first games that used this mechanism. And what it is that players will have their own deck of cards, which will have some sort of abilities or whatever that they will draw from, and they will often use these cards to buy new cards, better cards, and use those in the game, whether that being a game like Tyrants, where you use the cards to kill other people's units and swap them out and get points, or a game like Lost Ruins of Arnak, where you use the cards to explore, buy new cards, play artifacts to get resources, defeat monsters, and so on. So a very used mechanisms, and we see now in newer time that it is mixed more and more with other mechanisms. How do you feel about deck building?
I mean, it is by far my number one favorite board game mechanism. And that's coming from a card game background. That's mainly because I actually got into modern board games. Dominion was a huge game for me earlier on. I have pretty much every single expansion from the first print of Dominion. Tyrants of the Underdark introduced me to deck building / something else, and then Lost Ruins of Arnak and Dune Imperium perfected that mechanism in my head. And right now, whenever I see a new game that blends deck building plus something, I'm immediately interested to at least look at it. And I believe it's one of the mechanisms that will stay in the board game industry forever, and it's definitely one of my favorites. But we've talked about deck building, and I've mentioned worker placement, so why not I jump to that? The next keyword I will be talking about is a keyword called Eurogame, also called a German-style board game, Euro-style game, or a German game. Eurogames are mainly the games we refer to as a class of games that have complex rules, indirect player interaction, and multiple ways to score points. So pretty much everything we've mentioned so far, so if it's a point salad, if it has worker placement, if it has not much interaction, then that's a Eurogame. Pretty much every single modern board game you will be hearing us talking about probably qualifies as a Eurogame. For example, we talked about Minos a bit earlier on. We talked about Arnak. All of these games that award you points to win the game are being defined as Eurogames. Germany is the country that started the board game industry, and probably that's where the name came from.
Yeah, and it also says on BGG. I was also just looking that is
The word we used earlier.
Yeah, not all Euro games are European, of course, but they have some characteristics that is very common for most of them. That players are never eliminated. Conflict is often indirect. So what we talked about earlier, you don't really attack each other in that sense.
And because I talk about Eurogames, I will now take the chance to talk about the opposite of that, which is what we called Ameritrash. And I know that's a word that doesn't sound good, but that's actually how the word is defined. Contrast to Eurogames, American-style board games generally feature a prominent theme that is tied to the game's mechanisms, encourage direct conflict between players, and have a greater degree of randomness and or luck. Definitely Relic comes into mind when we talk about it, which is one of the games I love that features some of those stuff, and many will talk about War of the Ring as the prominent Ameritrash game out there. So yeah, two keywords that really contradict each other. That's why we went back to back on them.
Yeah, cool. I will talk about drafting. Drafting comes in different ways. One that is very known is like open drafting, and this is used where you pick something from the board, whether that be card, tiles, resources, dice, etc., from a common pool that you do to get some advantage, and you'll do that in turns often, hence in a draft. St. Petersburg is very known for this open draft where you will pick cards from the middle and add them to your own tableau. If we talk about close drafting, games like Seven Wonders where you, like hand drafting where you pick one card and send the rest next, where you have the choice to make. You don't know if the rest of the cards will come back, but in this moment you pick one out of a X amount of options. That is what it will mean to draft. And yeah, we played a lot of draft games together.
Sushi Go comes to mind, It's a Wonderful World comes in mind, and even other games, like let's say, for example, Terraforming Mars, integrate drafting into their mechanisms in various ways.
Yeah,
drafting's nice.
What we talked about earlier, the White Castle, we draft the dice in the beginning, so...
Drafting's nice, especially in small doses, I think.
Yeah.
All right, my next mechanism is a mechanism called Follow. And Follow is exactly what the name says. It's a mechanism where when a player uses his turn to take an action, then everybody else at the table takes a smaller part of that action. Puerto Rico and Earth come to mind when I'm speaking about Follow. And it's generally something that I personally like a lot because it shortens the playtime and it always keeps you engaged. If you have people in your play group, and that's totally fine, that tend to lose their attention easily and play with their phones, try and play one of those Follow games and you will get them hooked right away.
Yeah, and just like Nick mentioned, then it's also good for games where you, if you're a group with a lot of players, that means that it's easier to get done because since everybody's playing at the same time, you're reaching the end faster. So you can play 5 or 6 people even. And yeah, you mentioned some good games. Games that comes to mind for me as well is Space Base.
Space Base, yes.
Where actually other people's turn are more exciting.
Exactly.
Your own turn. And also, now that you mentioned Puerto Rico, New Frontiers, which builds a lot on that as well. So yeah. All right. I will just mention replayability, which simply refers to if the game is designed or made in such a way that the game can be played a lot and will still stay fresh, fun, after repeatable plays. Often if it has some I hate that word.
But from the top if you want.
Nice. Okay. like a variability in setup or other things where some things will change every game. On the other end, we have games with like the exit games, which is like a puzzle style game. So once you did that once, you can really replay it again. So that's the opposite of a game having great replayability. But of course, the exit game series then just made a tons of games. So if you really enjoy that, you can keep buying new games for that. So yeah, replayability simply refers to, will this be a game that we'll play again and again and again and still find fun? Is it still good after a lot of plays? We don't tend to care too much about it now.
That was my question,
Yeah.
How important is it for us, for you, replayability?
It still means something because I wouldn't enjoy buying a game, playing it one time, and then say, well, let's never play this again, or we experience everything straight away. But we play so many games now that it does need to be able to be played 100 times because we very unlikely will do that with most games.
Okay, let me give you a would you rather then. Somebody comes out with a game that's been labeled as the new Lost Ruins of Arnak. Everything seems like it. It's your favorite theme. It seems amazing. And then at the end of the review says, let's say someone good making the review, like Tom Vassell, for example. He says, yeah, but I don't like this game because the replayability is so low. That's on the one end. And then on the other end, you get a game like one of your mid-50s, let's say. A game that you have in your 50s. It's like, okay, you like it. And then at the end, Tom Vassell says, plus 1 point because it has infinite replayability. Where do you lean towards?
That is a hard choice. I think because we have so many games to play, it's not like we're missing a game to play. We always have like, okay, we need to pick one of these 20 games now that we want to play tonight.
It's even hard nowadays.
It's very hard.
Yeah.
So I would probably prefer to pick the game that seems like it could be my new favorite game, even if it will only be enjoyable for 8 games. That will mean a lot, those 8 games.
Sounds good. Yeah. Time to mention another amazing board game mechanism/category, then engine builders. Engine builders function a little bit like an engine would. You start with very low and limited things that we can do, and then slowly you're building up that engine. So by the end of the game, when that engine actually runs, you produce and you do 1,000 things. Of course, we cannot talk about engine builder without talking about the greatest board game ever created. Subjectively, Terraforming Mars is one of the most prominent engine building games, although many would say it's been replaced by Ark Nova, which is also an amazing engine building game. Engine builders give you what I like to call like the power of God in board games, because whatever happens after you play an engine builder is what you did, what you created. And sometimes it can feel so amazing to just go out there, build your engine, press start, and it goes off. The feeling is amazing.
Yeah, definitely. We had a lot of engine builder games that we played that we both enjoyed a lot. And I think it doesn't have to be, but often it's also connected to like a Tableau builder where you build up your Tableau in front of you. And yeah, I'm surprised you used the word subjectively about Terraforming Mars.
I mean, I'm going to get a lot of hate out there. I might as well get some people on my side.
Start to be a bit nicer about it. I like that. That's good.
Humility, of course.
All right. I will now mention a very old mechanism, maybe even from the birth of board games, and that is roll and move. Roll and move is just that if you roll a 5, you will move 5 spaces. It's very known in games such as Monopoly, and it is not a mechanism we see so much in modern board games. It's there less and less, but of course it still exists. I checked. We have played 213 games together, and Nick, guess how many board games of those 213 have roll and move?
Oh my God. We haven't played Monopoly together, but we've played Relic together. So definitely one. Let me think if we played. You have a lot of dumb filler games. We probably played more.
He means fun.
Yeah, that's what I meant. Sorry. Beep. Then I will go ahead and guess 3.
All right. From what I looked, and I mean, I could have missed one, but I think I saw through it pretty well. It is 2.
2, okay.
So pretty close.
What was the second one? Do I own it or is it your game?
The second one I own, and it is Deep Sea Adventure.
Oh, yes. That's true. Yeah. Okay, I was close. I guess you would have another fun filler besides Deep Sea Adventure in there. All right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Relic, yeah. I don't like the mechanic, roll and move a lot, because as Ayub already mentioned, it's pretty much random. So I roll a 5, I move 5. If that doesn't work, it's okay. Relic mitigates it a little bit because you can choose which direction to move. So technically, whenever you roll, you have 2 options instead of 1. Still a little bit, but I kind of like it more than that.
Yeah, and it's not just random. It's also the fact that you can't do anything about it. It's playing for you.
Yeah.
Which is it really needs to be mixed well with other things.
Modern board games have mitigation for it, which means they allow you to manipulate those dice. Sometimes even Relic has some cards that do that. But yeah, in general terms, roll and move is equal to luck. So
And
yeah,
you can
lost
see
control.
if 2 out of 213 games had roll and move that we played together, it is definitely not the one mechanic we're going
Exactly.
after.
The next mechanism / keyword we will be talking about is legacy / campaign. Legacy / campaign games are games that are played in continuation, right? The one after the other. In a campaign or legacy game, you play a session of the board game, and when you come back and play it, you will play the next in sequence level or scenario of it. So it's something like if you have played any role-playing games like Dungeons and Dragons, it's something like that, but in a board game form. Right now, we are running the Near and Far campaign, which is pretty light on that aspect because every time we just play a game of it, and there are some elements that change from game to game. But there are other heavier games we've played that really feature that, like, as I mentioned, Gloomhaven or Fate Forged, Pathfinder adventure card games, and so on and so forth.
Cool. What is, Nick, the difference between a legacy and a campaign game?
That is correct. A campaign game is a game that you play, as I mentioned, one scenario after the other, but by the end of it, you are able to press restart and play it again. In a legacy game, as you move and play through the game, things will change, usually through the use of stickers, which you will be putting on the rulebook, on the board, on your player mat, or somewhere else. By the end of a legacy game, you will either not be able to play the game at all, or you will have a finished product which you will be able to play as a standalone game from then on. So that's the main distinction between them. One plays only once, the other can be replayed in the future.
Yeah, and I do see some games do mitigate it a bit now with using reusable stickers, and so it's not a absolutely lost, but definitely you need to do some extra stuff to work your way.
Most of the legacy games come, or you can buy separately, what is called a removable sticker set. Yeah, so you can technically put those stickers and then remove them and play them again.
Yeah, and also, as I know, some legacy games will have you rip up the cards and stuff like that. And I know some other people.
Yeah, you don't have to do that, of course. Yeah,
quietly put it in a box without nobody knowing.
Yeah, well, if one day we make it to Patreon, I have a very, very, very sad story about a legacy game and a tearing up of a card.
Oh, all right. Well, let's see. This is just the beginning of our trip. The sky's the limit.
Sky's the limit.
All right. I will talk about worker placement. Worker placement is actually a form of action drafting where you will have meeples, or like we mentioned earlier with the White Castle dice, that you will place in a place often on a board that will dictate some type of action. Hence why I'm saying an action drafting. This will usually or traditionally mean that spot would be blocked for other players and therefore could not get the same. Newer board games sometimes changes this rule a bit. We see it like in viticulture, where you have one grande worker, like a big worker that ignores the placement rules and can go where someone already else is. It's a mechanic that we love a lot. It's also seen in a lot of Euro games because this having workers that you put out to gain some stuff is kind of nicely fit in this whole building an engine and getting resources style of game. So yeah, worker placement, definitely a mechanic we love a lot, right?
Yeah, of course, we definitely love worker placement. I do have a small question for you here. There are 2 groups on the internet when talking about board games and worker placement. One is more in favor of the old style. Worker placement must be very limited. You must block the spaces where you go and it must feel strict. And then the other one tends toward newer board games like Arcades of the West Kingdom, that you have like infinite amount of workers, or A Feast for Odin, where there are like 60 worker placement spots. Which one do you tend to like more? Do you have a preference?
So I do definitely think that both are very nice. I would be happy no matter which one it is. I think I might be preferring the old style a little bit. Just because having this tension where someone else is playing, like, oh, I really want that spot, and I want that spot too. I'm gonna take this one. I don't think anybody else won this in this round, and it goes around, and someone is even saying out loud, "Oh, maybe I should go get 2 coins," and you're like, "No, don't take my coins," and they go somewhere else. This whole tension, like when you talked about earlier, when being engaged in a game with the following action, this is not the same, but it has some of that vibe as well, where you are engaged in what others do because you really don't want your spot to be taken. And I like that tension. And that is a little bit more gone in some of those games that has other good points. But this, I think, is very nice for worker placement.
Yeah, you find me in agreement there. Although I do like loose games, I believe that in worker placement games, I like the tension of actually being afraid of losing my spot if I don't take it now. Cool. The next thing I will be talking about is the rondel. The rondel traditionally is a wheel or like a pie-shaped figure that has usually action spaces arranged around it. It can either exist in the center of the board or in the own player board. And what it does is when you rotate it or when you place things on it, it dictates the actions that you take. It's more and more commonly used nowadays. We played games like Ratsu Wistar or Windmill Valley that use it very well. And it's very interesting because you always need to go one step ahead to see where exactly you want the rondel or where exactly you want the action on the rondel. It gives a nice twist to games, I think.
Yeah, and very beautiful. You couldn't see it. Nick even moved his hand in a circle motion as though he was spinning the rondel as he was explaining it. And that is a very nice part about it. The moving the actual rondel feels good, and you see how everything spins around. You go like, oh, okay, now I can do this and that. It's not a rondel in City, but it does also have some spinning stuff.
Yeah, true.
That gives the same feeling of, what is coming up now.
Yeah. That's what you call a gimmick?
It might be a gimmick for some, not some for others, if it has a purpose, right? Cool. I have 2 more things I want to talk about, and the first one will be set collection.
Let's do it.
Set collection refers to, when you collect things in a set, and that will often reward you with things such as points or resources. A simple game that comes to mind when I talk about set collection is Fish and Cats. The only thing you do in Fish and Cats is set collection. So in Fish and Cats, everybody has a little extension on one of their fingers, which is a cat paw. And there will be a bunch of fish cards on the table, and you just go 3, 2, 1, and you point on one of the fish cards. If 2 people point on the same card, they will not get it. So you need to make sure you point on a card by yourself. And whenever you have 3 of the same type of fish cards, you score points. This only thing you basically do in this game is set collection, and whoever has 6 points first win. This is a set collection game, but it is very much used as a minor mechanic in other bigger games. Another game which has a lot of set collection is Trajan by Stefan Feld, which basically is a Mancala game where you do a lot of mini games, and there's like 6 different set collections on the board. Very interesting as well, and an enjoyable game.
All right, my final word for the day is a word called meeple. Meeple are usually board game pieces, usually shaped in a human form, and they are usually made of wood and bright colors. Meeples are mainly used in Euro games or worker placement games, and they are the actual workers that you place. Meeples have become very popular in board games, and nowadays many pieces will be called meeples, even though they are not meeples actually. And I have a fun question for you that I did not know the answer to. Do you know where the word meeple comes from?
Carcassonne, I think.
I mean, where the actual word comes
from. Actually come from.
Yeah.
Well, not the first game that used it.
No.
No, I don't.
It comes from the contraction of my people. Meeple.
Ah,
Yeah, that's crazy. I also did not know
all right.
before this recording.
Fun little fact for everybody.
All right.
My people. All right. I will go to my last mechanism that I will talk about today, and that is asymmetrical. When players have different ways they play, often like like a different in-game condition, different ways to win, totally different way that their faction works. If it's a game that has factions, such as Roost of Vast, that is an asymmetrical game. You are technically playing something that is not the same. You can almost call it like you're playing two different games. Often, having a variable player power is mistaken for being asymmetrical, where you just have something that's slightly different, but you're still doing the same things. That is a variable player power. People use these two words back and back and neck often, and I don't mind it too much. But yeah, asymmetrical is something where you basically are completely different in your playstyle or gold.
Yeah, and I want to talk a little bit about Root. The first time I played Root, it was a lot, like 6-7 years ago. It was the first time that I actually played a game that was that asymmetrical. You literally play a different game than everybody else. And in Root, you have these animal factions, and you have many meeples of the... Oh, meeples, we just used it. Of your animal type. And I got a function that only had one character. I think it's called the Vagabond or something. And that was very weird. Everybody had all those things. They could do things. And I was just one guy just moving around and trying to live my life. Yeah, that was very interesting as a first experience, I will say.
Yeah, and therefore those games also tends to be a bit hard to get into, because to play good, you of course need to know what can my faction do, but also what do the other factions do.
Exactly.
Because otherwise you have no way to stop them in getting an easy win and so on. But yeah, that's the word, asymmetrical.
We did it. We got through it. Yeah, it was not the easiest episode to prep for, but we hope that at least you got one of these things from this episode. At least you learned something. I know we certainly learned something. And very quickly, just to remind you, you can follow us on Instagram to see the games we upload there. That would be on board_game_nerds. And you can send us your emails at our email, boardgamenerds777@gmail.com.
Yeah, and of course, on both Instagram and our emails, we are very happy to get questions that we will answer in the podcast. If you have some topics you want us to talk about. And last but not least, also just want to mention that, of course, now we talk through a lot of board game mechanics, but there are, of course, many, many more. And these are just some of the very famous ones or used a lot that we might use a lot in the podcast that we just wanted to go through. There are still more and even more that, such as auction, that we didn't talk about, that are very used. So yeah, stay tuned and keep learning.
Of course, always. In the last episode, we mentioned that we're doing a 3x3 challenge, which we'll be talking full on about on episode 11. But until that time, we will reveal to you our last two games for that challenge. We revealed our first game in the previous episode, and for me, it was Seti. For Ayub was Civolution.
Civolution. I was unsure if I mentioned the other one. Yeah.
And fun fact, things are not going well for Nick so far. We're not going to say anymore. And my last two games on this 3x3 challenge will be Coloma and a mix of the Tiny Epic series.
Very cool. And my two games will be Kraftwagen and Rajas of the Ganges, the card game, Cards and Karma.
Sounds good. That episode will be airing on the 28th of November. That will be episode number 11, so look forward to it. Any closing thoughts for our fans, Ayub?
I hope that you keep listening and write us what you want to hear about. Other than that, keep playing.
Keep playing, nerds. See you around. I was Nick.
This was Ayub.
Take care.